where's the source of alarmism? So is it the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change? Like, what? There's a chain here. Is there somebody to blame along the chain, or is this some kind of weird, complex system where everybody encourages each other? Can you point to one place? Is it the media? Is it the scientists?
I think the UN Climate Panel is fundamentally a really good climate research group. You can have some quibbles with the way that they sort of summarize it in politically coordinated documents and stuff, but fundamentally, I think they do a good job of putting together all the research. This also means it's incredibly boring to read, which is why virtually nobody does it. I'm sure you have, but I'm pretty sure a lot of climate journalists have never sort of looked past the at least the summary for policymakers.
So they climate panel, they do they do predictions as well.
No, well, they pull together all the stuff that people have published in the peer-reviewed literature, and then try to summarize it and basically tell you what's up and down with climate change. They do that in four large volumes every 4 to 5 to 6, 7 years or something. And yes, it's I think it's the gold-plated version of what we know. There tends to be a lot of this is what they say. Actually, they say so many different places with so many different people that it's not quite clear exactly what they're saying. Often, you can sort of find contradictions between one volume with one set of authors and another. But look, I think this is fundamentally the right way that we know about climate. Mm-hmm. But then it gets translated into how do you know about this? When most people don't read these 4,000 pages, you read a news story in a newspaper, and that news story will be very, very heavily slanted towards, if you say, so sea levels could rise somewhere between 1 and 3 foot, what do you hear? Yeah, you obviously hear the 3 foot. 3 foot is just more fun, more scary, more interesting than 1 foot. And it's that way with all of these. So what's the prediction for temperature rises? It's somewhere from not very scary to pretty damn scary. And again, you hear the pretty damn scary all the time. And then there's obviously always researchers who are saying, well, but actually it could be a little more scary than that. And then there are likewise researchers who say, well, it's probably not going to be as scary as that. And most of the journalists will, interview.
So do you really put the blame fundamentally on the journalist?
I put it on the media setup. Look, media is simply trying to get clicks or sell newspapers. And if you were just going to say, this is not a big issue, it just doesn't sell anything. But I think you're probably much better able to address this.
Well, no, folks can Google for my name, Revkin, and the words front page thought. In the newsroom every afternoon. Now we have a 24/7 news cycle, so it's different. But back in the day, the New York Times, when it was a flourishing print institution, every afternoon there was a front page meeting. And the big poobah editors would go in there, and the desk editors come in with their pitches for the day. And my friend Corey Dean, who was the science editor for a chunk of my time, I remember having a conversation with her about some new study of, I think it was Greenland, the ice sheet, and I laid it out for her, and she said, where's the front page thought in that? So we're all set up to look for that.
The scary bit.
And the news environment has gotten so much worse than 10 or 20 years ago. At least you had filters and limited number of outlets, and there was some sense you could track was good or bad. There's lots of problems with that system too. But now you have an information buffet. So if you want to be alarmed, or you want to stay in the tribe of those who think this is utter bull, you can find your flow. And that has led, but getting back to this specific question, the 2018 IPCC report, which was a special report commissioned to learn about the difference between 1.5 degrees of warming and 2, which sounds so weird and technocratic and complicated. That's the one that generated the whole meme about 8 years left.
12 years.
Till doomsday.
Then, yeah, it was 2030.
And that's
Can you
the one.
explain the meme?
This was the idea that there's a point if we don't cut emissions in half by whatever it was, 2050, we're doomed. That emerged from that specific report. And it wasn't something that was in the report. It was in the spin around the report. And that's what captivated Greta appropriately as a young person going, and with her unique vantage point and stuff. And that report, I still need to dig in and write something deeper about what happened with that particular dynamics, created this recent burst of we're doomed rhetoric that I think you're focusing on. And it's all in the external interpretations, which journalism laps up because we're looking for the front page thought. But it's not just the journalists, it's the whole system, NGOs, environmental groups. If in developing country, well-meaning leaders in developing countries, because of the structure of this treaty that goes back to 1992, that's the Paris Agreement is part of, they are now really looking for a way to portray this as a CO2 problem, not a vulnerability. Well, there's a vulnerability aspect, but like in Pakistan, their climate minister, which they didn't even have a climate minister 5 years ago, is blaming everything that happened in Pakistan on carbon dioxide warming the climate, creating this, when a lot of what was going on was also on the ground. And you can blame colonialism, Pakistan's history, all kinds of things. But under the treaty, you want it to be about CO2 because that puts the onus on rich countries. You're not paying us. Where's our money? And they're right, in the context of what everyone agreed to. There was supposed to be $100 billion a year from rich countries to poor countries starting in 2020. It didn't happen. It's like basically some money is flowing, but it's not really
made up money.
Yeah. And so that whole dynamic, they latch on to the climate science and they so they're there and they're very handy, quotable people. And you have a justice angle, you have bad guys and good guys, which fits all of these narrative threads that come together into this information storm we're still living with.
And then, of course, it's not Pakistan's fault either, right? I mean, it also actually, almost all leaders now say it's because of climate, because then It's not, we didn't do anything wrong. In Germany, for instance, when we had that flood last year, it's not implausible that climate had a part in that. But it's very, very clear that the main reason why so many people died in Germany and Belgium was because the alarm systems didn't work. And this was plainly the local leaders in Germany. Now, if I'm stuck here and basically have caused the death of 200 people, would I rather say, yeah, that's on me, or would I say climate?
And all the time.
It's just such an easy scapegoat.
I don't want to place it all on the journalists, I think, because there's a lot of, if I were to think about, what did you call it, front page thought, there's a lot of really narratives that result in destruction of the human species. So nuclear war, pandemics, all that kind of stuff. It seems like climate is a sticky one. So the fact that it's sticky means there's other interests at play, like you guys are talking about, in terms of politics, all that kind of stuff. So it's not just the journalists. I feel like journalists will try anything for the front page, but it won't stick unless there is bigger interests at play for which these narratives are useful. So journalists will just throw stuff out there and see if it gets clicks, and it's like a first spark maybe. It's maybe a tiny catalyst of the initial steps, but it has to be picked up by the politicians, by interest groups, and all that kind of stuff.